What's going on today, guys? So today we're at Sea Dog Cove. The goal for today, I try not to have expectations, but the goal for today is to try to hopefully find and photograph some lady slippers. Now, I believe there's both pink lady slippers and white lady slippers here. And the pink ones especially look just so cool. Like they're just, I don't know, it's the weirdest thing. They almost look like, to me, like two lungs, and the pink ones have all the like red veins in them as well. So I don't know, it's a really cool looking plant. I really like the trails here because they're so narrow, and I find that it just gives you this submerged feeling that you're in kind of the backwoods, but the trail is just so well maintained and conditioned that it says otherwise. It's super easy access to get here. There's a pull-off like basically right behind me. You might even be able to see my car. You pull in there and the trail's no-brainer. One-way trail that eventually leads to the lookout, which overlooks, I can't remember the name of the area right now, but it overlooks, and there's a really good lookout there. Beautiful view once you get to the end. The best features about Sea Dog Cove, in my opinion, obviously are the lady slippers and the wildflowers that this place has to offer. But I just think it's a really good place to come hike. I mean, you could come hike this thing. It's about 15-20 minutes to the lookout and back, so it's just a beautiful little hike. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go explore around, hopefully find some lady slippers or other wildflowers, and try to get some good photographs of them, and we can discuss different tips for photographing wildflowers. Well, all right, let's go explore around. I've gotten to the point where I found a grouping of 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lady slippers all together, and although this looks really cool to the naked eye, it's really hard to get a strong composition with so many characters in the frame. And I think that a lot of people make the mistake of getting excited, and it's like, oh, I found this family of them, like this is so rare, it looks so cool. But it's actually a lot better to just focus on the simple compositions and really just try to eliminate as much distractions as possible. So if you got 5 or 8 characters in the frame, the eye is going to want to look at all of them. So ideally you want to keep just 1 or 2, maybe even 3 flowers in the frame when you're doing wildlife photography, and just trying to eliminate the distractions as much as possible. I mean, by all means, if you can get it nice into a composition, like nice and symmetrical, or I've had a few wildlife photos where you could get one in focus but then a couple characters in the background out of focus just to support that, then that can look really nice. But I find a lot of the times it's actually working again. So I've come further down the trail and I found another pink lady slipper here, and what I really like about this is we have all these pine needles in the back, and that's going to create a nice neutral backdrop so we can get the separation of the pink part of the flower to the background, because that's ultimately what we want. And that's a really good tip for wildlife photography, is just trying to constantly isolate the flower itself and just focus on that, almost like a center composition. So obviously a big part that plays into that is the depth of field. You're gonna want a really shallow depth of field, and if you have a really fast lens that can go f1.8 or something like that, then that's great. But you know, most landscape photographers usually just have something at f4, and that works perfectly fine. In a shallow depth of field, it's not just dependent on aperture, it's also dependent on your length to the subject. So even with an f4 lens, you can either back up or get closer depending on what's behind the subject, and that will still create a really shallow depth of field and give you the bokeh in the back, which will ultimately give the separation of the subject. So I really like this. I set up here and I tried to get a composition. It looked great, but the pine needles are orange and red, and to me that's kind of working against the already pink and red hues that are in the flower. So I'd really like to try to find something that's either white or green, or perhaps like a gray rock, or just green ferns or something like that, that'll really make this pink flower pop. So you have that separation even further, not just with depth of field, but with contrast in color. So what I'm going to try to do here is show you guys how to really focus and isolate just the flower part. I'm really hoping that this isn't going to be too shaky when I move the camera here. But by actually zooming in, you start to see that we're more so just focusing on the flower rather than the entire plant. And that's ultimately what we want here. And you still have the ferns completely out of focus, so they don't become too much of a distraction, but they still provide that green background, which is going to help the flower itself actually pop. And that's what we want. However, I don't really like the pointy parts of the ferns to the left of the frame. You can see that they're just kind of slowly coming into focus there. Those are a little too prominent, and I feel that it's taking away from the actual flower. So although I do like this composition here, I think I'm gonna keep walking around and see if we can find some other ones, because luckily here at Sea Dog Cove there's a lot of lady slippers, both white and pink. So I'm just gonna keep going around and see if I can find something else. When you're shooting wildflowers, a lot of the times you want to get right down to the height of the actual flower. This will help eliminate a lot of the distractions, and so when you do that, sometimes you'll actually have to set up your tripod like this, where you put your ball head or however you attach your camera onto the bottom of the middle part of the tripod. And it just surprises me how much people don't actually do this, or they're laying on their stomach trying to get down low, and they don't realize that most tripods have this feature where you can actually just mount your ball head underneath and get it the height that you want. So hopefully that's a little trick for you guys that you can use. So I managed to find another pink lady slipper with the ferns in the background, because I really think that green background is working the best for us, just the color contrast between the pink and the green. So the concept is still exactly the same. You want to just focus on eliminating distractions and really just bringing in as much focus into the flower or whatever you want the viewer to pay attention to. So for me, I would be tempted to bring this right in almost like that. I really like how the very top of the flower, you can still get some of the sun hitting. There's like that point of highlight right there at the top of the frame. I really like that. I also like to include some of the bottom leaves. I just like the geometry, the shape of it. I think that looks really cool. But searching for that backdrop is really the biggest part of the game. You can kind of notice in the back of the frame, it's the same thing. We have the ferns showing, but by having them out of focus, it really just acts as a backdrop just to have that green color there. So I think I've made my case pretty clear that when photographing wildflowers, you really want to separate, or rather isolate, the flower itself within the frame, so that your viewers will just focus on the flower. But every now and then you'll come to a scene like this where you have smaller flowers, but a lot of them, and you can use that as a really strong foreground element into a scene. So at this scene, there's a clear walking path with a nice little bridge over a stream, and you can utilize these smaller flowers in abundance as a strong kind of leading line into that, I guess. I find with compositions like this, wide angle lens really comes in handy, because you can either get lower and closer to the flowers to make them appear much bigger in the frame, and have the walking trail and bridge kind of smaller within the frame, so there's less focus there, or vice versa, whatever you want to use. It all comes down to just emphasizing whatever your subject is or whatever you want your viewers to focus on within the frame, within the composition. All right, all right, all right. Okay guys, it's time to close out the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video today at Sea Dog Cove. I know I really enjoyed it, going around photographing the lady slippers and all the other wildflowers that were there. If you're local in New Brunswick, I would really encourage you to check out Sea Dog Cove. Great place to hike, as I mentioned several times in the video. Hopefully you guys found value in the video about the tips and tricks for photographing wildflowers too. That was kind of the main point of the video. So hopefully you guys learned a thing or two and you can use that in your own practice of photographing wildflowers. On that same note, if you found value in the video somehow, then please give the video a thumbs up. It's quick and easy for you to do, and it really helps me out. If you guys have been following along and you like the content so far, I know I've only had 2 videos up, then go ahead and subscribe and follow along with me. But yeah, that's the video. We've explored around Sea Dog Cove. Hopefully we learned a thing or two about photographing wildflowers. Perhaps this is the first time you've ever even seen lady slippers. They do look pretty cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. It's just one of those things that it's better seen with the naked eye than it actually makes for a strong image. Probably shouldn't have picked my nose on camera. Shit.